Okay, folks, welcome to Engineering for Good, a live program that focuses on fun and insightful exploration of all good things related to engineering and design. I'm your host, Dr. Darrell Williams, Senior Vice President of Science and Education here at the Franklin Institute, and it's my pleasure to be with you again for this program. I have a very exciting guest that I can't wait to introduce you to, but first I'm just going to cover a couple of housekeeping rules. Of course, as I said at the beginning, let's have some fun. This is also meant to be conversational. So we have the chat feature on Facebook. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them as we flow through the conversation. So let's dive in. So today we're going to have a conversation about the future of the auto industry. And we're going to talk about the social and market forces that are pushing design for a more digitally connected and seamless driving experience. But in addition to that, we also know that there's an appetite or a growing appetite for electrical vehicles here in the US as well as globally. So, how will all of these factors combine to reframe our notions of mobility? So our guest today is joining us to help us unpack this and some other big questions. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the esteemed Dr. Ken Washington, Ford Motor Company's Chief Technology Officer. He, in his role, which is very expansive, he leads Ford's global research organization, which really encompasses a number of things such as development and implementation of the organization's or company's technology strategy. He also is responsible for leading things that include Ford's next generation vehicle electrical architectures, sensing and computing stacks, energy propulsion and sustainability, advanced materials manufacturing, controls, and automated systems. So as I said, he's got a very big portfolio. And he also leads Ford's STEM and university research programs. So Ken, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. Welcome. I can't start though at lunch, and I feel I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate you for your 2020 induction into the National Academy of Engineering.
Well, thank you very much, Darrell. And it's really great to be on your show with you. And I've known you for a long time, so it's really a pleasure to be part of your experience here. And thanks for the congratulations.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's fantastic. And as you said, you've known me for some time. So guests and those of you joining, so I have known Ken was actually, I would say, my first real boss. Back when I was a soon to graduate high school student and was still trying to figure out what road I was going to take. I knew I was interested in science and engineering, and Ken, being a nuclear engineer by training himself, he really served as a role model for me. And so it's fantastic to have sort of followed his career trajectory and just I'm really excited that we were able to reconnect and to see you doing so well, Ken. So thank you so much. So I think that's actually a really good place to start. So can you share a little bit, before we dive into some of the technical questions, can you just share a little bit about your own career journey? Like, how did you end up at, Ford as its Chief Technology Officer?
Well, Darrell, like many things in life, my path was not linear. It was very indirect. And if you had asked me 30 years ago, would I end up as the CTO of Ford Motor Company, I would have thought you were crazy. So it wasn't a direct plan, but I really kind of led my career by a couple of pretty simple principles. One is I always wanted to do work that was important and it had a significance to society, things with meaning. And I wanted to work on things that were technically challenging and interesting. And I wanted to work around really great people. And so as I did that, as I followed those principles, it led me from my first job where I met you at Sandia National Laboratories into Lockheed Martin, where they invited me to lead their IT research team. That was after spending 20 years at Sandia doing a variety of different jobs, which equipped me for going into bigger roles in other companies. So I left Sandia as their CIO and joined Lockheed Martin working for their CIO. And I did that for a while and then sort of missed working with some of the more direct hardcore sciences and had the real gift of being able to move back into the sciences, working for the space division of Lockheed Martin. And that was a really great move for me. I really enjoyed working in the space technology group. Gave me exposure to technologies very similar to those that I do now at Ford.
Mhm.
Where I learned some new skills, but again, the same principles applied. It was work that was important, needed to be done. It was interesting. I was working around some really great people, and I got to learn a few things. And then Ford came recruiting me for doing this job, and it checked all three of those boxes for me. I knew I was going to learn something. I knew it was important work to do because the auto industry was going through a transformation, and I wanted to be part of that. So I put my name in the hat, and one thing led to another, and here I am.
So one of the words you use, which I think is very interesting, is that word non-traditional, right? And I can speak to a little bit about that myself with my own career pathway, but I'm curious how you went from nuclear engineering to information technology. How did that transition occur?
Well, that transition was actually more natural than it sounds. It was natural because when you're working in nuclear engineering, a lot of your work is computational. It's computer-based work. It's simulation work. The last thing you want is for a real nuclear incident to happen.
Mhm.
So we did a lot of simulation of nuclear incidents, and I learned how to program a computer pretty effectively, and fell in love with the software and technology space. And so it's very natural for me to go into information technology as part of my, the next transition in my career. But here's the message I really want to leave with your listeners, which is the fundamental skills that I learned in school, in high school and in college and in graduate school, and even in the first, say, 5 years of my career at Sandia, really built up this toolkit of expertise
Mhm.
that I felt I could go anywhere. I felt I could do almost anything because I had the fundamentals of math, the fundamentals of critical thinking and reasoning and engineering skills and principles. And the rest is just learning on the job and applying your discipline to the specific job at hand. So I would encourage your listeners to don't sell yourself short. You can do more than you may realize if you have a solid foundation of science, math, and engineering.
And I think another piece too that ties to what you're saying, and I think was maybe one of the affordances of working with a national lab like such as Sandia National Laboratories, is you're really thinking about the future. I remember and recall my experiences there. I mean, you all were working on some things that were really sort of far out and futuristic in many ways that hadn't really necessarily been conceptualized before, and you were testing some of these ideas. And I think that for me gave me a better sense of how engineering can be applied in different contexts, and this idea, as you say, those transferable skills that allow you to be adaptable and develop that agility where you can take those skills and apply them to anything, which I think is really fascinating.
That's right. And I'd like to also introduce the notion of lifelong learning. So
Mhm.
while you need the solid foundation, you also have to be willing to open your pores for learning new things and being a lifelong learner, learning things on the job. Don't be afraid to, especially in today's world where you've got, the world at your fingertips with the internet. You can do online classes. You can read digital books anywhere. You can take lessons. You can watch YouTube videos. I mean, the world of knowledge is so rich today that you can be a lifelong learner pretty easily. And so that's a huge part of the equation of staying current, because one thing's for sure, the pace of technology is accelerating and it's not going to slow down.
Absolutely. So let's jump in and start talking about this pace of technology, because you're at the helm of really helping move Ford Motor Company into the future and that focus on technology itself. And so I'm curious, as we talk about electrical vehicles, we talk about digitally connected experiences and seamless driving experience. Like, how does all of that really come together in the thinking about design at Ford Motors?
Well, one of the things that we're recognizing is that we're going through a transformation, really a double transformation, where we're having to modernize ourselves at the same time we're having to disrupt our business model. We have to go to market differently because customers have new expectations about what they want from their vehicles. It's not just about the vehicle and being a great looking vehicle
Mhm.
anymore, the driving dynamics. It's about the experience that they can have with it and the relationship it has with the rest of their digital life. So we're having to modernize everything at the company in terms of bringing new technology to how we design vehicles, how we put digital experiences into the vehicles at the moment that you buy them, but also how we can create new experiences for you after you buy them by delivering new products or new services to you over the air. So it starts with rethinking the experience of our customers and then committing to making that experience continuously uplifted by giving you new content, giving you new wow factors and new experiences over time. This is going to be a regular diet of how our customers will experience their relationship with Ford Motor Company. And the other thing that that's doing for us, because our cars are now connected, they're digitally connected to the internet, they all have modems in them, we're receiving massive amounts of insight and telemetry back to the engineering workforce to help us do better designs, help us fix problems, avoid warranty issues, improve our quality, and also how to design the next iteration of vehicles so it will resolve pain points and create new value for our customers. So it's a whole new world of how people are experiencing their interaction with the company.
So this sounds like what's being referred to as upstream thinking as opposed to downstream thinking. Is that sort of the idea here, or is that because you're able to be so responsive and data driven throughout the entire experience that you're able to in many ways predict and then also react and the balance of those features, right? So I know that you sent me, and I'm going to try to share my screen here because I wanted to kind of have you walk us through what we're looking at here. So this is a panel that's in can you see my screen here?
Yeah, I just have to move some stuff out of the way.
Okay.
Oh yeah, this is the interior of the new Mustang Mach-E. This is really an important development for us because well, first of all, I hope your listeners will agree that it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, I think the design team did a fantastic job. But the second thing I want you to recognize is that this looks very different than any prior vehicle that we've ever put into the market. And the reason it looks different is because the battery electric vehicle revolution that we're in the middle of right now is about much more than just putting an electrified powertrain in the vehicle. It's about changing the vehicle to become more of a digital platform. And in a digital platform like a battery electric vehicle, customers expect their interaction with the vehicle to be very modern, more like a smartphone. And so we made the decision to re-engineer the infotainment stack. That's what you're looking at here in this large, beautiful interface where you actually turn on and control and operate many aspects of the vehicle. Sits right in the center of the vehicle, so passengers and drivers can have easy access to it. And the key thing about this interface is it was designed with significant and deep customer insight. So we held many clinics and interacted with customers, and we designed it based on how they wanted to interact with the vehicle. And so it has the kind of experiences in it that customers who buy battery electric vehicles would expect. Gives you easy access to charging stations. It allows you to customize the experience to you. So it has digital keys, and so you can make it my interface. And so if you leave the car, you loan the car to say your spouse or one of your grown children, when they get in it, it adapts to them. So there are many features in this interface that reflects the expectation of the modern digital battery electric vehicle owner of the future.
So with that more customer focused design process, how has that impacted the design process and from initiation to final product? Has it extended the design process? Has it reduced the time it takes to go from ideation to final product? I'm curious about that.
Well, I'm going to turn your question on its head because what it has done is made us realize that that there's not a beginning and an end. It's a continuous ongoing process.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, this interface and the way and some of the details of how you would interact with it are changing. And they're changing because we're receiving, like I said, insight from customers as they take some of these early vehicles. I have a Mustang Mach-E in my garage, and I can tell you, I've already sent several signals back to the team saying, you know, when it does this, I'd rather it do this. And you know, they won't do exactly what I say, but they'll start gathering the general trends and insights from customers, and then provide over the air an update to change things that are clear pain points. So the design cycle is everlasting.
I
So
see.
in fact, much of the value that we envision coming from battery electric vehicles and connected consumer experiences, whether it's retail or if it's commercial vehicles, will be through services that happen long after they buy the vehicle and drive it off the lot initially.
Okay, very. And so I'm curious too, right, as we're transitioning from fuel-based designed cars to these more connected and even fully electrical vehicles, how what does that entail, that entire shift from being a fuel-based operation to something that's electrical in concept?
Well, many things change, but you know, some things don't change. And so some of the things that don't change is we still have to manufacture and design the vehicle at scale. And so and safety remains a high priority. And so the vehicles still go through rigorous testing and validation phases and processes. The things that are changing are a real focus on a software first, experience first design principle and process. You know, it's been sort of jokingly said that software is the new oil. And that term comes from the realization that what's going to create value are the applications and services that you build with software and you improve with software and you deliver over the air to customers, you know, before they buy the vehicle and then after they buy the vehicle, is going to create long lasting value and recurring revenue. And so that's all new. That's all new to Ford. We've seen that in other industries. I mean, the famous example in the smartphone industry, of course, we all know, with the introduction of the Apple iPhone and the iTunes platform. You know, the value of that story came from the iTunes library and the platform. In many ways, this is very parallel, where we're going to see a lot of value come from the platform. Well, the vehicle is the platform upon which we can innovate. And we know that innovation is going to be a result of a lot of software development that we do, but also that we do in partnership with other companies. And so partnerships are going to be extremely important to us as well as we lean into this new reality where software is the new oil.
That's it. And so you're making me think of a couple of, you know, questions and I think thoughts that people have too about the fact that cars really are becoming more and more like mobile computers. And so, you know, we talk about autonomous vehicles. We have now with, as you were describing, with the phone technology and the mobile technology that we have now, and the onset of like Uber and Lyft. Now we have rideshare, which of course has also changed how we think about mobility. At one point, does it get to where I think, speaking specifically, you know, as Americans, we really our sort of ethos is this idea of like independence, right? So where do we start to lose our independence the more and more our technology becomes, I'll use the word intrusive. You know, is that something that is part of conversation in your company?
Of course. I mean, the thing to recognize is we're a large global company. And so we serve markets all over the world. And one of the learnings from being a global company serving multiple markets is that there's no such thing as one size fits all. You have to be tailored to your market, to your audience. And so even here in the United States, you know, the country is not a monolith. There are customers that live in and around densely populated urban environments, and they need different modes of mobility than those who say, operate a farm in a rural environment. And I would even say the needs and wants and desires of customers on the West Coast might be very different than those in the
Sure.
Midwest.
Sure.
So we have to be very targeted and customer centric about how we design and what we emphasize and how we go to market. And the same is true if you look across the regions globally. And so one of the things we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic has been that the desire for mobility is part of, has become more vivid in terms of our need to fulfill people's desire to be independent, to be able to get in their own vehicle and go somewhere in a way that feels safe to them, in a way that doesn't rely on, say, a community service. And so I think that's shined a light on the fact that personal vehicle ownership in the retail space is going to be around for a long time. That doesn't mean it's for everybody, because in certain urban environments, you may find lots of people that don't want to ever own a vehicle or want to use shared mobility. We bought a scooter company because we believe that micro mobility is going to be an important part of enabling people to move around and have the ability for mobility and freedom. So all of these things are part of a multimodal, region-specific strategy for enabling people to move from point A to point B in a way that fits their lifestyle and their design and their desires.
I know that there had been some concerns when I was reading up on this, and even before this conversation, looking at the changing demographics, and there was talk before pre-COVID that millennials and younger generations were less inclined to think about purchasing automobiles and things of that nature. But you just were talking about the effects of COVID. I'm curious too, are you seeing any data that's showing a shift in that regard in terms of the appetite for automobile ownership among younger demographics?
So, I mean, we've been tracking the demographics, even before COVID, and we certainly see differences in retail demand by demographic. And COVID has just put an exclamation mark on the interest in certain demographics to actually want to own retail vehicles. But more importantly, it's really focused us on our strengths, and our strengths are really largely in the commercial vehicle and the truck space. And what we're seeing there is that there is no shortage of appetite in the commercial vehicle space for fleet management and fleet ownership and assistance in operating businesses. And as you think about the vehicles that a small or a medium business might want to have to advantage their business, how would you design that vehicle, and then what services would you integrate and add to that vehicle over time to help that customer be great at their business? That's where we're putting a lot of our attention and energy, because commercial vehicles are going to remain an important part of our business for a long time, and retail is important as well. But we have to think about both differently, especially as we go into electrification, because retail customers have different requirements in terms of electrification range than commercial vehicle customers do.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about that too, and thinking about the ecosystem to really make electrical vehicles a fully viable part of the everyday. So right now there are certain, there's a couple of places where people can go and get their cars charged. They can do some folks have outfitted their homes to be able to charge at home. But how has this really become something that's ubiquitous when you're competing against still an industry that's very focused on and reliant on fuel?
Well, it's important to first recognize that we're going through this trend, this inflection. I would have said, say 2 years ago, we were quite a bit ahead of the inflection. We're right in the middle of the inflection right now. And this is the moment for us to realize that we have to take aggressive actions to to be a significant player in the electrification revolution. So we've made a commitment to lead the electrification revolution. And that means doing more than electrifying our powertrains. Because for people to migrate from ICE to BEV, battery electric vehicle, there are barriers, and we need to help make it easy, right? So charging, how would you find a charging station? If you want to go on vacation, how do you string together a series of charging episodes in order to make that trip straightforward and easy and painless? How do you get a charging station installed in your home? So just, how do you make the transition to an electrified lifestyle? Are there things that an electric vehicle can do for you that an ICE vehicle can't do for you, like provide backup power if your power goes out in your house? So we're thinking in the end about all of these sort of lifestyle moments, and making investments in, removing pain points from those moments and making it easy for our customers. And then the other thing to note is that we have to continue to tackle the engineering challenges of driving down the cost of the battery pack, because the battery pack is the most expensive part of a battery electric vehicle, and that makes battery electric vehicles more expensive than internal combustion engine vehicles. But if you look at the technology projection curves for battery chemistry, it would inform you that there's hope on the horizon, that continued investment in battery chemistry and new innovative ways to integrate cells together into a battery pack, and creative ways to integrate that battery pack into the vehicle, could actually lower the cost to the point where it's competitive with internal combustion engine propulsion systems. Those are the things that we're working on very, very aggressively at Ford. The details, we'll get into that, but rest assured that this is something we're committed to leading, and we're making big investments in the electrified revolution in the end on all dimensions, including the topics that I mentioned.
And that research and development is taking place not only internally to Ford, but I would imagine through partnerships that you have with other entities, right? Because these are some huge engineering problems, right? That don't,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So we're definitely taking some steps to do this in partnership with others.
Got you. So I want to talk a little bit. I know that you all recently announced a partnership with Google. So what does that entail? And how does that help you get to your end goal?
So there's a couple of layers to that. So let me start with the first layer, which is we made the decision fairly early on, even before we solidified our Google partnership, that we needed to transition our infotainment, that's the center stack, where you get your radio and your music and your settings, that we needed to transition the operating system of that stack into a more open source architecture. So we made the decision to move to the open Android operating system. So the Android open system platform. And that made it fairly straightforward to then add to that, through our partnership with Google, their Google Automotive Services technology stack, which brings to Ford the ability to fairly quickly put into production their Google Maps, their voice system, and their navigation, and so that is going to really give our customers with a world-class experience that mirrors the experience they get on their Android phone. And because it sits on top of the Android operating system, we'll be able to bring our customers applications from the Google App Store as well. So it opens up the ecosystem it opens our customers up to an ecosystem of lots of opportunities for new experiences to be brought into the infotainment stack. So we think it's a really smart move. But more importantly, Google and Ford's relationship has includes an element where we've committed to putting a cross-functional team together, including resources from Google and resources from Ford, working together in partnership to do ideation on top of that platform and to do new technologies and to develop new experiences. We're just getting started with that. So the details of how that'll shape out and what specifically we're going to work on is too early to get into. But the framework is there, and we've got it's written in the partnership that we're going to proceed. So I'm really excited about that.
That is very exciting. That's very exciting. So a guest wrote in, based off of our earlier discussion about thinking about the ecosystem, and the question that they have is, do the investments include working with gas stations around the country to include the ability to charge an electrical vehicle? And this particular guest question says that they believe or think that there would be a barrier in that regard. So is there work with that industry in terms of thinking about the accessibility of charging stations?
I wish it was that simple. Unfortunately, it's not. The reality is the electric vehicle revolution sort of has been creeping along for quite a while in a very organic way. And as a result, there are many different charging station players involved. And so it's not as simple as, going to one partner at a gas station and say, let's just do charging at your gas station. Mm-hmm. So we're in the process of working through our strategy for how we're going to stitch together our partners across multiple players in the space. And then we think, well, in fact, we know we have to figure out how do we make the experience more seamless. Mm-hmm. Because today, if you look at how charging is done for almost any battery electric vehicle, except for just set Tesla on the side because they vertically integrate it, it's not straightforward. It's very complex. And we know we need to make that simpler. And the North Star for making it simpler is make it as easy and as simple as Tesla owners have it, but for a larger ecosystem because we have a larger scale than they do. So that's work to be done on our part. And the details of how that work to be done will play out is that's still to come. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Are there other major design challenges in the production of electrical vehicles versus fuel-based cars that you're still working through?
Well, the reality is they're actually much simpler to design and manufacture because there are fewer parts and mm-hmm. fewer things can go wrong. And so the challenge is how do you optimize and modernize the manufacturing system in the company mm-hmm. to be efficient in a future where you have battery electric vehicles as your prime product. The complication, what makes this a problem that's worthy of an awesome company like Ford to tackle is we have to do that in parallel to continue to design and build and manufacture and service great hybrid and internal combustion engine vehicles as well. So that's what makes this transformation difficult. But I believe we're up to the challenge and we're working our way through it. So
right, and this is an industry-wide challenge, right? This is not a challenge that's unique to Ford. This is a challenge that's unique to the auto industry, who are based on internal combustion engine based production.
It is, but I really want to be humble about the fact that there are a number of companies that are recognizing that they can enter into the battery electric vehicle market because they don't have the legacy complexity of an internal combustion engine portfolio. And so what we're finding is we're at this moment where battery electric vehicles are the future, and we are committed to leading that electric revolution. We're making big investments. We've got a plan, and we're moving forward. But we're doing that at a moment when there are new startups and new entrants that are not carrying the legacy of the history. and it allows them to be more nimble. So they are formidable competitors, and that's not lost on us. So that's why it's so important that our plan includes a commitment to modernizing, a commitment to disrupting ourselves. We're 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 all in terms of embracing advanced computational methods and models, connectivity and artificial intelligence, leveraging the full power of data, working aggressively with strategic partners like Google and like Microsoft and other companies. And this is all part of our plan to actually win, because we know it won't be easy.
Sure, sure. So as you were talking, it made me think about, with all of these changes, and these are some very transformative changes in an industry that, is transitioning from ICEs to electrical based cars. I can imagine that there's been some evolution in terms of the technical careers that are emerging out of this too, and how that's changing the workforce at Ford. Are there some emerging careers that that didn't exist before at Ford?
I would say there are more. There are definitely more more numbers of people involved in certain areas than there were in the past. So we have many more software engineers today than we had 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And next year, we're going to have more than we have this year. And the year after that, we're going to have more than we have next year. So it's a growing area for us. And so, as I said, software is the new oil. And we're retraining and reskilling many of our engineers to have the skills needed to modernize our operations, to build AI-enabled software that goes inside our vehicles or in our data center, to support the development of our modern electrical architectures, to work with partners like Google, work with partners like chip companies to design our next-gen electrical architectures. So all of these talents have always been at the company. It's just we're adding more volume. And
Sure.
retraining and reskilling some of our existing talent.
Do you still operate in a very sort of traditional way? Because I know that with COVID, it really has changed the way technology-based companies are thinking about the workplace and things of that nature. We've been here, even though we're not necessarily a technology-based company or organization, we certainly talk and advocate for science and technology, but we've adopted more of like a hybrid approach to how we physically run our building and operation versus what we do in a digital space. I would imagine that you have a similar approach, but has COVID sort of had an impact in terms of how your company's thinking about that workforce engagement piece?
Oh, without a doubt, Daryl. It very quickly moved us into this space where we had to learn how to work effectively using remote tools. And we're still working from home. Our knowledge workers are still working from home. And we've had to learn how to do that successfully.
Mm-hmm.
There are some real bright spots to making that transition to working from home and working remotely. And one simple example is in a few cases where we have project teams that used physical vehicles to do testing and development and prove out of technologies, they could no longer do that. So they transitioned to forced them to accelerate the migration to using modeling and simulation and virtual testing and validation methods. So that's a more fit way to do it anyway. And COVID sort of pushed us to accelerate that transition. So that was a good thing. And so there's no doubt that we've transitioned to a different mode of working for those workers that don't need to physically be in a lab or in a physical space. With that said, I mean, we know that there are parts of our company that has to be physically either in the office or in a manufacturing facility. So our place-dependent workers, our manufacturing workforce, continue to go into work physically. The most important thing is that we have a playbook that allows them to do that safely.
Mhm.
And so it's not anybody's choice to use these new protection methods, but we have to in order to work safely, and we've been able to do that and protect our workforce and continue to make and manufacture these outstanding products. So I'm really proud of the company for doing that.
And I would imagine too, a question just came in from a guest about 3D printing and the role that plays in design, redesign, and transformation. Can you talk a little bit about how additive manufacturing is applied in your business context? And I would imagine as an example of where you could have your knowledge workers that don't necessarily need to be on site, and then you have your folks who are responsible for the execution of that on site, and those two working together in this particular example.
Yeah, I'll give you a few teasers, but I won't give away all of the strategy. We recognized the promise of additive manufacturing several years ago, and we sort of double clicked on that and made some investments in some companies that we believed in. One we've been quite public with. It's a company called Desktop Metal. They use powder bed fusion for making metal parts, high quality metal parts. That's just one example, but we work with many other companies that have additive manufacturing 3D printers. And we've done quite a bit of prototyping, proof of concept parts. We've made manufacturing jigs and fixtures that we use to improve the ergonomics of our workers in our manufacturing plants. And we're using it to do a few other really interesting things that I'll just leave it at that. So it's something on our radar screen, and we've got a very active team working in the 3D printing space. It's going to be part of our modernize everything playbook going forward. So watch this space and know that it's on its way.
Sure. It just as we're talking, it just sounds like such a fascinating place, and what an opportunity that you have ahead of you and your company to really help us reimagine the future. It almost sounds like an engineering playground.
I feel so blessed to work in and around these amazing people in the company. It's as I said when we started, it checks all the boxes for me. It allows me to work on something that's really important. Very few things are more important than the freedom of movement and being able to enable people to move and when they need and want to in an affordable, safe, and secure and enjoyable way. And at the same time, I'm working with some amazingly smart and just really, really lovely people. A company that has strong values that I believe in, and then at the same time, I get to learn some new skills and do things that are interesting and challenging. So you can't ask for anything more than that.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Right. So I know, so we're soon to wrap up Black History Month. So I think we, would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about that and spend some time reflecting on, Black innovators, both past, but also those, present or current. I'm just curious, are there any, innovators, Black innovators that you feel were sort of helped guide you in some way or, presented a roadmap for you in terms of your own?
Yeah. So when I was a young aspiring engineer, I almost hate to say this, but it was at a time when the world didn't put very many role models in front of me that looked like me, and in many ways, that's what gave me this sort of burning fire of passion in me to be a role model for others, because I didn't have them, and so I had to receive that inspiration from others in different ways. And so I still remember the first time I was introduced to a senior executive African American leader. And it was when I joined Lockheed Martin, and I actually went to work for an African American at Lockheed Martin. His name was Joe Cleveland. He was the CIO of the company. And he gave me my chance for my first opportunity to work at the executive level. So he hired me in as a vice president. And I just thought Joe was like the best thing since sliced bread. I really was motivated and inspired by him. I watched how he led his team, how he modeled the values of the company. And then he introduced me to two other African-American executives on the senior team that reported to the CEO. And so here I am, I was a relatively mid-career person. I was in my early 40s. And I was working for this Black executive, and I had access to two other Black executives. And I remember the names: Art Johnson, he was the senior VP of strategy at Lockheed Martin at the time, and Linda Gooden, she was the executive VP of their information business. And all three of these executives were just they were so gracious with their time and their coaching and mentoring of the African American employees of the company. And that was insanely inspiring to me. And I just kept thinking to myself, I want to grow up and be like them. And so they gave me the inspiration to continue to be my best and to give it all I got, because I knew that executives that look like me can be in the C-suite. And here I am, I'm in the C-suite. So thank you, Joe, Linda, and Art.
Absolutely. And as we started this program, I acknowledged the role that you played in my own trajectory. And I think it's so true when people say, if you can't be it if you can't see it. And I think it's important to see people in these spaces and doing this work, because it helps to reinforce that, identity development. I also think too, while we typically sort of call out individuals and individual inventors and African American inventors and trailblazers, I think those are people that we know about. But there's a whole slew of folks out there that are unsung. And I would also like to believe that, we've been in this for some time. A lot of people just didn't know that we were inventors or that we were innovators. And so now that more opportunities have been made available, and that yes, there's more, accessibility across the different career trajectories and pathways. I think for me, it's important for us to continue to have these kinds of conversations and to be and making ourselves available to serve as role models and mentors for those that are going to come behind us. So I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said and your sentiments, and also want to thank you too, on behalf of myself, the Franklin Institute, and I'm sure even your colleagues at Ford Motor Company for what you do and the impact you've made and will continue to make. So thank you.
You're very welcome, Daryl, and I couldn't have said it better myself. So thanks so much for having me on your show and giving me the opportunity to talk about my career and some of the work that I'm doing here at Ford and the products and services that we're in the process of building. So it was fun. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for enlightening us. So that's it, folks, for this edition of Engineering for Good. Thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you back here in March. And until then, be safe and see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.